Who was Leif Erikson? Chapters 8 and 9. Chapter 8. The Vikings and the Skrælings. Leif never sailed back to North America, but other Vikings did, including his two brothers and sister. Leif's brother, Thorvald Eriksson, led the first expedition back to Vinland. Thorvald and a crew of about 30 men spent 2 winters at Leif's old camp, cutting down trees and grapevines. Thorvald then set off to explore the area further. He sailed up a long fjord to a pleasant wooded area. Thorvald decided he would like to build a home here. However, on the sand, Thorvald and his crew noticed 3 strange mounds. They were canoes, and under each one hid 3 men. This was already someone else's home. Immediately, Thorvald and his men attacked, killing 8 of the 9 native men. Only one of the Native Americans, whom the Vikings called Skrælings, escaped and ran to tell his tribe about the murderous invaders. The Skrælings returned and surrounded the Vikings. As Thorvald and his men ran back to their ship, arrows rained down upon them. Thorvald was struck, and he later died. After the Skrælings had left the area, Thorvald's crew buried him in the spot where he had wished to build his home in Vinland. The Vikings stayed in North America for 1 more season before returning to Greenland. Upon hearing of his brother's death, Leif's other brother, Thorstein, decided to sail to Vinland to bring Thorvald's body back to be buried in Greenland. But wild storms prevented him from completing his journey. Thorstein's ship returned to Greenland without ever making it to North America. A Viking trader named Thorfinn Karlsefni led the next trip from Greenland to Vinland. About 130 people, including Karlsefni's wife, joined the expedition. Karlsefni also brought along cows and sheep. He planned to make the Viking settlement in North America a permanent one. For 3 winters, Karlsefni and his fellow explorers lived in Vinland. As on previous expeditions, the Vikings gathered lumber and grapes. Karlsefni's wife gave birth to a son named Snorri, the first European to be born in North America. The Native Americans returned to the Viking camp, this time to trade skins for cow's milk and red cloth. But what they really wanted was the settlers' iron weapons. When one Skræling was caught trying to steal weapons, he was killed on the spot. Karlsefni feared a war would break out between the Vikings and the natives, so he decided to return to Greenland with the valuable cargo of lumber and grapes they had collected. The voyage of Leif's sister, Freydis, was the last attempt to build a permanent settlement of Greenlanders in North America. Unlike previous expeditions, Skrælings attacked Freydis's crew almost immediately after they arrived in Vinland. According to one of the Viking sagas, Freydis, who was pregnant at the time, lifted a sword from one of her dead countrymen, held it up to the approaching Skrælings, and dared them to attack her. The Skrælings turned around. Although she was brave, Freydis realized the Vikings were greatly outnumbered by the Skrælings. They quickly returned to Greenland. The dream of a permanent colony in Vinland was over. Where is Vinland? In 1960, a Viking settlement was discovered at the northern tip of Newfoundland, Canada. The site, which was dated to around the year 1000, was given the name La Once aux Meadows, the Cove of Meadows. There was evidence of 8 buildings at La Once aux Meadows. One building included a furnace for producing iron, technology that the Native Americans at the time did not have. But there were also remains of butternuts, a type of walnut that grew in forests hundreds of miles away. In other parts of Canada, New Brunswick, Quebec, and Nova Scotia. So did the Vikings travel even further into North America? Probably so. The sagas mention multiple settlements in Vinland, but to date, no real evidence of Viking settlements has been found anywhere besides what is now Newfoundland. Chapter 9. Life after Leif. Back in Greenland, the Viking colony continued to grow after the death of Leif Erikson, as more Vikings from Iceland and later from Norway moved there. The Greenlanders traded walrus tusk, ivory, and other goods with Europeans. At the colony's height, as many as 3,500 people lived in Greenland. But after about 450 years, the Greenland settlements disappeared. Why? A major factor was the long-term weather patterns in Greenland. When Eric the Red settled Greenland in the late 900s, the climate was warmer. There were fewer icebergs, so the Vikings could sail easily into port and out to sea to hunt for whales and seals. By the 1300s, the weather in Europe and the North Atlantic had grown colder and stormier. Thick sea ice returned. Hunting and trading expeditions became dangerous or even impossible. Crops failed. And the Vikings abandoned Greenland. While the Greenlanders likely never returned to Vinland after their failed attempts at colonization, they had continued sailing to Markland to cut down timber. But eventually the way to Vinland was forgotten. It seemed like no more than a legend. On July 4th, 1825, long after the Viking Age had ended and Greenland was abandoned, 6 families in Norway boarded a ship called Restoration. Like their ancestor Leif Erikson, they were bound for North America. These 52 people became the first organized group of Norwegian immigrants to settle in the United States. Many more would follow in their footsteps. 100 years later, President Calvin Coolidge addressed a crowd of more than 80,000 Norwegian Americans in Minnesota. In his speech, the president acknowledged what the crowd knew to be true, that Leif Erikson had explored America centuries before Christopher Columbus. The crowd roared its approval with pride. In 1929, the state of Wisconsin declared October 9th, the day Restoration reached New York Harbor, to be Leif Erikson Day. Soon, other states did the same. In 1964, the United States Congress made Leif Erikson Day official nationwide. Today, millions of Americans trace their heritage back to Scandinavia. Most of them live in the Midwest, where many cheer on their favorite football team, the Minnesota Vikings. Statues honoring Leif Erikson stand in public parks from Seattle to North Dakota to Boston. While he was never able to establish a permanent settlement in Vinland, Leif the Lucky was indeed the first European to explore the North American continent. A skilled sailor and brave leader, Leif Erikson didn't let the Old Norse legends of his father and their Viking ancestors keep him from discovering the unknown parts of the world. His voyage motivated others to follow in his path and continues to inspire people today. Good job.